Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Purdue picked up a pair of big wins this week, taking down Nebraska in a wild one on Tuesday in Lincoln before thoroughly controlling the win over Iowa on Saturday in Carver Hawkeye Arena. We'll look back at the week that was, as Purdue got a couple of wins that it really needed, putting itself in really good position here with Michigan coming up, a really big game. We'll go full observations, full takeaways, all of that and more. Purdue's now 21-4. We'll look ahead to the week ahead, and we'll talk about Caden Pierce. Purdue picking up a big boost for its roster for next season. Princeton transfer Caden Pierce. Talk about that impact, and we've got some good questions from you all on a very full episode today. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Come join the conversation there. You can always send in questions to the podcast. Do it there on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Email the show, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We will be here every week, all the way from now through the end of basketball season into the summer. All the way gearing up for football. It never ends around here. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss anything. But this week, Purdue 80, Nebraska 77 in overtime. Purdue 78, Iowa 57. When you looked at this week, it was a sort of a daunting week on paper, but it was a week that you knew Purdue really needed to go 2-0. It got it done. And as you look at the week that was, Purdue played, 50 to 55 minutes of national championship contender basketball. Purdue was really, really good. The win at Iowa, Purdue looked the part of a national title contender. The game at Nebraska, in the first half, Purdue certainly looked like that. In parts of the second half in overtime, yeah. And Purdue picked up 2 quadrant 1 wins on the road to really help bolster that NCAA tournament resume. It helps Purdue hold serve in the Big Ten race that now is really tight right there after Michigan. 3 teams with 3 losses, 2 teams with 4 losses. This thing's tight. This is a real race here now that Illinois has dropped a couple of games. I think as you look at this week, Purdue's energy was a really big deal. We had talked a little bit about Purdue's height and Purdue's size being flipped against it at times when teams were really spreading Purdue out and attacking from there. Purdue's bet was that rebounding was going to be the ultimate difference maker there, and this week it was. Purdue out-rebounds Nebraska by 17. Purdue doesn't win that game without thoroughly dominating the glass against Nebraska. And then Purdue goes into Iowa, wins the rebounding battle by 8. Not as drastic because Purdue didn't miss as many shots to get as many offensive rebounds, but Purdue was really, really good on the glass. Iowa only gets 9 offensive rebounds. Nebraska only gets 6. That's pretty good, especially when you consider that the second half of that Iowa game, it wasn't garbage time, but it wasn't not garbage time. Purdue had really taken control of that game in the first half. I think Trey Kaufman-Renn is the catalyst of it all here, and he's having a really interesting season because the scoring isn't there. The shooting percentage is there. The effectiveness is still there, but his volume is way down. He's only scoring like 12 points a game. That is complete night and day from last year when he was taking a ton of shots and was scoring 20 points a game. But he has clearly fully embraced the rebounding aspect of his spot at the 4, and it was a massive difference this week. He pulls down 31 rebounds in 2 games. This isn't the most natural role for him, but he's been awesome. He has been fantastic the last few games, and that's what Purdue needs. Take advantage of the scoring opportunities when they're there, but continue to play with that effort, continue to rebound with that tenacity, because that's how you kind of create that rising tide that lifts all ships. It lifts everybody, and it brings Purdue to that next level. Same deal with Oscar Clough. He was awesome, a man on a mission in that game at Nebraska. He pulls down 10 offensive rebounds alone, has some real big baskets. Obviously, he gets the and one that wins the game in overtime, but he was huge. He was huge. And again, another guy here who is not the biggest scorer for Purdue. Like Oscar Clough gets baskets here and there, but Purdue's not running a lot of stuff for him. He's playing his role at a really high level, and that's what you need from those teams that are championship caliber. Your main guys are the ones that are going to take a lot of shots. Your Braden Smiths, your Fletcher Lawyers, Trey Kaufman-Wren's getting plenty. You're getting good looks from three, but Purdue's really, really coming together nicely as a basketball team right now, it seems, with energy being the catalyst there. That energy is what got Purdue through that Nebraska game, what got Purdue over the finish line there in overtime, and it made sure the Iowa game was never in doubt. But I hesitate. I never want to sound too hyperbolic here, but had Purdue lost that game at Nebraska, it just would have been devastating, because Purdue was so good for the first 25 minutes of that game. Purdue was awesome. Purdue was executing at a really high level, and it still did. It just didn't get shots to fall. But to be able to find a way to win that, again, I don't want to say it would have just tanked the season, but that would have been a really, really rough loss to get past. That would have been really, really difficult. But Purdue's energy helps it find a way. Purdue comes out and punches first in overtime. Nebraska comes back, Purdue punches back. And Purdue was up 13 with 2 minutes to go or so. It just had the most uncharacteristic meltdown at the free throw line you'll ever see. That's kind of what it was. Nebraska fought back because Nebraska's a good team that wasn't just going to go away. That Nebraska comeback wasn't as much Purdue's doing as it was the game evening out a little bit, because Nebraska wasn't 20 points worse than Purdue. Nebraska's not 20 points worse than Purdue at home as a team. That evened out. Purdue pulled away, and then Purdue just couldn't seal the deal. But it ultimately finds a way to win, and look, that's all it is. This is a really encouraging trend, because right now you're kind of in the dog days of the season, right? I'm recording this. It's 6:39 p.m. on February 15th. 4 weeks from this moment, we'll be all tuned into CBS watching the selection show. That's in everyone's minds. You got 3 weeks left in Big Ten play. Everyone's kind of ready. The weather's nice. I got out and hit golf balls today, and you're starting to feel that March is coming, but you're still in the midst of a conference race. You're still in the stretch that is the Big Ten of 2 games a week, road trips. But this is where Purdue is starting to play its most energized basketball of the season. We can argue best basketball, whatever. This is the most energized Purdue has looked, and that's really, really encouraging. And Purdue's executing well. This week, Purdue executed wonderfully on offense. The ball moved great against Nebraska. Purdue got a ton of open threes. It just so happened that Purdue didn't make many. Purdue goes 13 of 46. It is what it is. Purdue's not a 28% three-point shooting team, and the looks that Purdue got weren't the equivalent of 28%. The looks Purdue got was probably closer to 48%. It's just the way the ball bounces sometimes. It's a weird sport. Nebraska gave Purdue the chance to blow that thing open from three. Purdue did at the start of the game, and had Purdue, made it 17 for 46, 18 for 46. That game is probably an avalanche in the second half, but Purdue just couldn't do that. Against Iowa, Purdue was really good. Great ball movement, good looks. Purdue shot much better from three, 12 for 30. Purdue shot well from the field. Purdue only turned it over 4 times. Like that. One of the more encouraging trends about this team is that it hasn't been, and of course, knock on wood if you're a Purdue fan, it hasn't been as susceptible to the turnover barrages that some of Purdue teams in the past have been susceptible to, because that's when it gets out of hand. Right now, Purdue's 21st in the country in turnover percentage. You'll take that all day. Purdue's doing a really, really nice job there. That's really important as we go down the stretch. Braden Smith was awesome. He didn't have his best week scoring in that game at Nebraska. He has 13 points on 15 shots and then just 5 points on 5 shots at Iowa. But he turns in a 22 assist week with only 2 turnovers, I believe. Yeah, that's elite. That's elite. And Purdue didn't need him to be a scorer at Iowa. Purdue was getting really good looks without him being a big scorer at Nebraska. It just is what it is. But he's been awesome. He's taken that game to a next level. And this stretch here is kind of Braden Smith's time. When you're going through a stretch that Purdue's in the midst of right now, 2 games on the road, quad 1 games on the road, you get them done. Now you come home for a big 3-game homestand. This is where your seniors come to shine. This is where your leaders have to come out and really stamp their legacy, so to speak. And he's doing that. He was incredible this week, and again, the energy just fantastic from all of them. The craziest stat was I think it was Raftery at the Nebraska game brought up Jakari Harris's home road splits on the season, that he was shooting like 50% from 3 on the road and 16% from 3 at home. I might have those numbers slightly off. And then he goes and scores 14 points, 3 for 6 from deep at Iowa. Talk about crazy. I don't know that I've ever seen anything like that. I don't know what to attribute it to. I don't know if there's anything to attribute it to. Just a really wild stat there. Crazy. Really crazy. He had a great game. And these made shots from him. He made a 3 at Nebraska. He made 3 at Iowa. It comes at a point that was really big because I noticed in the Oregon game that Oregon was not guarding him from 3. Oregon was more than willing to concede that shot. That's dangerous. It happens. You know, some guys are out there, and Jakari Harris certainly brings value on the defensive end. He's a pretty good player in transition, but when you aren't someone who has to be respected as a 3-point shooter, it makes it a little bit tougher for Braden Smith to operate. A little bit tougher for Trey Kaufman-Renn to operate. Him making those shots is big. That's a really, really positive thing for Purdue. He's having an all right year. He's shooting 33.8% from deep. It's probably not quite where you want it to be, but we'll see here as the season progresses if he can stay hot a little bit as Purdue does come home. I didn't think Purdue defensively was crazy different, and I had a question about this that I have in the Q&A, and I'll just kind of touch on it here. I don't think Purdue did anything super different defensively. 2 very different games this week. Nebraska is a really tough cover because of Rink Mast, and you saw that in why Daniel Jacobson didn't really play at all. He played 5 minutes. Rink Mast was just a really, really tricky matchup for him. Rink Mast is a tricky matchup for everyone. He's awesome. He's a really unique player with his ability to shoot, put the ball on the floor at his size. That's what you have to worry about. And I thought Purdue did a great job on him. Purdue did a really good job at making him take 5, 6, 7 dribbles to get to his spot on the block. If he makes it from there, great. But a guy like that, what you don't want to get is him getting to his spot in 2 or 3 dribbles. Make him work for it. Make him get fatigued a little bit. Make it come from a spot he doesn't want to shoot it from. Purdue did a pretty good job defensively on him. It wasn't great, but 18 points on 13 shots. It's not awful. He makes 4 threes, which he's a good 3-point shooter. I don't know if he's a 4 for 7 3-point shooter, but Purdue was great on Price Sanford. Braden Frager wasn't much of a factor. Purdue defended really, really well. It was Jamarcus Lawrence who ended up slipping there at the end. He had a good game. Sam Hoiberg didn't do a ton of scoring. Purdue defended that game really well. It really did. And then Iowa is a completely different situation because you have, I don't want to say they're a one-man team because that's not fair to the rest of them. It's not fair to like Tavion Banks and some of the other guys on that roster, but it is such a Bennett Sturts show. He does everything for Iowa, but Purdue did a really good job on him. He finished with 19, but 2 for 6 from 3, only 1 assist. You kind of take that. You kind of live with that. If he's going to get 19 but only have 1 assist, need 12 shots to do it, only make 2 threes, you're probably going to live. And then the rest of Iowa's team didn't shoot super well. It was completely the inverse of the game at Mackey Arena when you had 3 guys combined for 9 3-pointers, I think, that aren't normally big-time 3-point shooters. They didn't do that against Purdue the second time. I don't know that Purdue did a ton different from a schematic standpoint. I think Purdue did a better job of not getting into terrible switches. I don't think either team could exploit them the way someone like Illinois did, but I think the energy is a big deal. The connectiveness was really good, and it always helps when you don't turn the ball over and you're rebounding at a really high clip because you're letting your opponent get only 1 shot. And when you're not turning the ball over, you don't have those live ball turnovers that lead to runouts. You're getting shots, and you're making the opponent play in the half court. And that's going to be huge against Michigan. We'll kind of use that as the transition here. It's a huge week for Purdue at Mackey Arena. Tuesday night's going to be a really big, really special one. This is the first time in 21 years that the number 1 team in the country has come to Mackey Arena. I believe the 05 Illinois team that was awesome, that made it to the national title game, only lost 2 games all season. I believe that was the last undefeated team, last number 1 team to play in Mackey Arena. As I got to thinking about it too, I mean, I thought maybe it was the Zeller Oladipo IU team. I thought maybe it was that Duke team that came in for the Big Ten ACC Challenge with Kyle Singler. But no, it was that Illinois team, I believe. So a huge game. Michigan's going to be number 1 when the AP poll refreshes. Maybe Purdue slides back into the top 10. I admittedly don't really pay a lot of attention to the AP poll. I don't get a lot of value from it. I much prefer to look at metrics like KenPom, like Bart Torvik, things of that nature, and things like the net that actually tell me something for predictives and for the NCAA tournament. But this is a really good Michigan team. It's going to have a lot of hype around the game. It's one of the bigger games in the sport thus far. I mean, top 10 matchups aren't exactly a dime a dozen, even in this expanded conference era of college basketball we're in. Michigan's really good. I mean, you look at this Michigan team, it's number 1 in KenPom by almost 3 points, 24-1. The 1 loss came at home against Wisconsin. Wisconsin went 15 for 33 from deep. You want to know kind of the blueprint to beat Michigan? There it is. You're going to have to shoot some threes and make a lot of threes, because the length is just different. It's a really good defense. It's number 1 in the country in defensive efficiency. Adai Mara is a real difference maker at center. He's a really effective shot blocker. Michigan builds everything around him a little bit. And then it's really long with Morez Johnson and Yaxel Lendenborg. When Michigan plays those 3 together, that is a ridiculously long front line of those 3. That's really crazy. Because I got messed up on KenPom here. Lendenborg 6'9", Morez Johnson 6'9", Adai Mara is 7'3". That's a really, really challenging group to deal with. Namari Burnett's not exactly short on the perimeter either. They present some real challenges there. And for Purdue, you're going to have to be patient on offense. You're going to have to take good shots when they come. It's like I remember talking about, and Purdue did a really good job of it against Houston last year. When you play those really high-level defensive teams, you have to take good shots. You can't wait for great shots. Painter was talking about that in a press conference recently. The whole good shot to great shot thing is awesome when it works out, but what happens when you turn down a good shot and don't get another good look the rest of that possession? Because when you play a team like Michigan, that might be how it goes. Purdue's going to have to be selective, but it's going to have to be ready to fire when it has those good looks. Purdue's going to have to continue some of this rebounding success. It's going to look different against Michigan because Nebraska is not a team that crashes the offensive glass, and Iowa's really small. It's Bennett Sturts, but they don't have dynamic guards and they have no post play. So this is going to look entirely different. Purdue's rebounding renaissance has been promising, and you really like seeing it. It's going to get more difficult here against Michigan. Purdue's got to keep Michigan out of transition. That's a huge deal. Michigan will try to run as much as possible. It is one of the fastest teams in the country, number 11 nationally in adjusted tempo. Its average possession length is 7th shortest in the country. Michigan wants to run. If it has the chance, it's going to get out and score on you. That's not to say that it's not an efficient half-court offense. It is. Michigan shoots fairly well from three, but you'll take that all day over letting Michigan get out and run because Lendenborg's a 30% three-point shooter. Elliot Cadeau's a good one. Merez Johnson's not going to shoot many. Trey McKinney, LJ Kaysen are decent. Namari Burnett's a really good one. They have good three-point shooters. Will Cheddar off the bench, but don't let that come in transition. Make Michigan work for it. It's a big game. It's one that I think it's a reset of the Big Ten race a little bit, and it's probably the last gasp for anyone besides Michigan to get a share of this thing in the regular season. If Purdue wins this thing, Purdue's right there. And the rest of the schedule, it has difficult games, but your most difficult games are at home. In terms of the Big Ten race, Michigan goes to Purdue. It still goes to Illinois. It goes to Iowa. It plays Michigan State at home. I mean, I don't think the odds tell you that Michigan's going to lose two of them. The KenPom data tells you Michigan will not. But if you want to have a chance, if anyone else wants to have a chance, Purdue probably needs to win this one. And if you're Purdue and you don't, then regardless of what happened in the past few weeks, you probably weren't going to win the Big Ten without getting Michigan at home. I mean, as we've said, 17-3 is the best anyone has done in this era of 20 Big Ten games. If Michigan goes 18-2, you kind of tip your cap and move on. It is what it is. And if you get this win, it's a gigantic win. It puts you back in the one seed conversation. You're going to have to win out probably, but you're in that mix. And you just get a massive, massive boost. Regardless of how the game goes, Purdue has to turn the page really quickly because Indiana comes to town on Friday night. Indiana has a bit of a rest advantage. Indiana played this afternoon here on Sunday against Illinois. It, by now, is probably back in Bloomington, and it's prepping for Purdue. Purdue plays on Tuesday night, then Friday. Purdue's seniors are 3-4 against Indiana. For as much as they've accomplished and for as many great things as they've done, the record against Indiana is a bit of an eyesore because Purdue's had the better team every season of that, and the record doesn't indicate that. They went 0-2 their freshman year, then 2-0, then split last season, and almost lost both last season, and then lost at Bloomington a couple weeks ago. A big one. a really big one for those guys. They're a prideful bunch. They're a really competitive bunch, which might not always be the best way to channel that against Indiana, especially when you're down there. But regardless, you can't let that Michigan game beat you twice if you get beat by it, and you can't let that Michigan game give you such a high if you win that you aren't ready for Indiana, because that game is going to be really important to Indiana. Indiana is right on the cusp of the NCAA tournament. They're in as of right now. Their big win is Purdue and Wisconsin. They beat Purdue. They're pretty much a lock to be in the NCAA tournament. So Indiana's going to be hungry. That's a really big one for Purdue. A really big week. It really is. This is kind of what you come for. 2 games at home that are going to be really charged up environments. It's a big week. Less than 30 days remain between now and Selection Sunday as we're in the heart of college hoops season. Away from the podcast, I want to quote insurance coverages for 20 new people before the bracket is revealed. If you're in the state of Indiana, I can help you. Give me a call at 317-846-5861 or email me, jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com. And as an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, let's see if we can save you some money for Purdue's run in the big dance. The season's still going on here, but Purdue got some massive news for next season. On Friday, Caden Pierce announced that he's going to play his last season of college basketball at Purdue. He played 3 seasons at Princeton, then redshirted this season to preserve his final year of eligibility, and will do that at Purdue. Will get his Princeton degree if he hasn't already, and then will play at Purdue next season. As a sophomore, he was the Ivy League Player of the Year. As a junior, he battled some injuries, played through it, did not win Ivy League Player of the Year again. He's 6'7". He'll slot in as a 4-man for Purdue. It comes from a family of athletes. His older brother is Alec Pierce, who plays for the Colts. He's got another brother who played hoops at William and Mary in North Carolina. A really good ad for Purdue. This is someone who was going to be one of the most coveted names in the portal. Duke was recruiting him. UConn was recruiting him. Louisville. The who's who of college basketball was after Caden Pierce. And if you ask me, I think this is a real floor raiser for next season's team. It helps solidify your roster even further. And it's tough to really project forward a year when you don't know what will happen in the transfer portal. But assuming continuity holds, you have a pretty nice backcourt. Omer Meyer, C.J. Cox, Jakari Harris, Antoine West, Luke Ertl. See if Jacob Weber slots in there to start the season if he's ready to play. That's a pretty good crew. That's a deep backcourt. Jack Benter can play that 3, can play the 4. Now you have Caden Pierce at the 4 too. 1 through 4, that's a pretty solid group, especially considering that you lose Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Renn from this year's team. That's a whole difficult replacement conversation, because those are guys you don't just replace. But Pierce rebounded really well at Princeton. He was up and down as a 3-point shooter, low to mid 30s for his career there. He was also asked to do more than he will be at Purdue. He's a good athlete, so he'll be able to get some stuff off the bounce, will be able to rebound, should be able to defend at a decent level. The 3-point shooting is going to be something to keep an eye on, but he should be getting better looks too. It leaves the real question for next season at the 5 spot, right? Daniel Jacobson's had some ups and downs this season, as you'd expect for a freshman big guy, especially one who was hurt for a lot of last season. Will he be ready to be a 25-minute per night center next year? Right now, he's not there. We're also not to next season yet. There's a lot of time between right now and November. Riley Burgess comes off a red shirt. A lot of energy there. Really competitive, really high motor. Is he ready to be a contributor at the 5 spot. He's kind of that tweener 4-5, certainly big enough to play the 5. Is he ready to go? Can he stay healthy? These questions exist. I really struggle trying to project whether freshmen are ready to contribute or not. I don't know where Sinan Huan slots in. Is he destined for a red shirt? I don't know. But how do you feel about that group? Because if continuity holds, the only conversation you really have at this point about the portal is whether you look at another big guy or not. I don't know. I don't know. And of course, there's been a little bit of whisper about Oscar Clough maybe looking to petition for another year of eligibility. I don't know. It gets a little tricky, though, because you're probably not going to have an answer on that right away. The NCAA wouldn't hear a case until the season's over. So by the time you know, the portal will be closed. And then if Oscar Clough gets it denied, are we going to go all Trinidad Chambliss, Joey Aguilar, file suits in court here? I'm going to doubt it. But if you're banking on, if you're really interested in that and interested in someone being in there, do you go into the portal? I don't know. I'm going to guess as of now that Clough moves on and that Purdue doesn't really go in the portal for much more, but you never know. You never know. But nonetheless, with Caden Pierce coming in, it's a really nice get for Purdue. I think it raises the floor. I think you look at this is a transition year, so to speak, but still a team that's good enough to do some damage. The bottom won't be falling out of this group unless some really unexpected stuff takes place. I kind of touched on our question about the defensive end of things. Just Purdue has to continue the energy, continue being connected, because that's what leads to so many of the issues, is that Purdue doesn't know what it's doing. The play against Oregon, where I think it was Omer Meyer that switches with Jack Benter, and then Jack Benter thinks he's going back to his guy, kind of hedging and returning. And then I think it was Lynn for Oregon gets a step in wide open 3. Things like that. You got to be connected. You got to be communicative. That's going to really come out against Michigan, man. And you've got to box out like hell. You've got to just fight and find a way. Purdue can be good enough defensively. Purdue's probably not going to win a lot of games because of defense. But, hey, right now, Purdue is top 20 in KenPom in defensive efficiency. The sport is getting more efficient on offense. It just is. The numbers from year to year, the offenses get better, the defenses are getting worse. It's just part of the sport. Purdue's kind of hanging in there right now, and if it can get a little bit better, then great. Is Purdue playing now to shoot more threes so it can get more rebounds with the guys up front? Seems to be the case the last few games, as Purdue shooting many more of them and rebounding a ton more. I don't know about that. I think against Nebraska especially, Purdue took what the defense gave it. And against Iowa too, CJ Cox is hitting these threes in the second half and he's wide open. Jakari Harris hits a couple in the first half and he's wide open. Fletcher Lawyer got some good looks in that game and hit a couple of them. I don't know that I think Purdue is specifically out trying to get more threes up, but certainly against Nebraska, when those open shots are there, you've got to take it. I don't know that Purdue's game plan was to get Fletcher Lawyer 17 three-point attempts, get CJ Cox 10, Braden Smith 9, but when that's the way the game plays out, it's the way the game plays out. I do think Purdue's effort on the offensive glass has been better, and that's why you notice it, especially against Nebraska, who's not a great rebounding team. Purdue's going to take good shots, though, and teams are very gun-shy about Trey Kaufman-Renn. That's clear as day. I don't know. I guess I get it. I mean, he's certainly proven his ability as a scorer. Teams aren't letting him get a lot of one-on-one stuff. So when those open threes are there, you got to be ready to let it rip, let it fly. And if you can get offensive rebounds out of it, all the better, and Purdue is right now. Who will the starting 5 be next year? I don't really want to get into these conversations yet. There's a lot of basketball to be played this season. We've got to see if continuity holds. We've got to see if Purdue adds anybody. But you look at a backcourt mix of Omer Meyer, who it's his time to shine next year. He's got the keys to the offense at the point guard spot. This year probably hasn't been everything that Omer Meyer had hoped for. I don't know how well he's suited to play off the ball. And when you're a, so to speak, floor manager point guard, a floor general, playing limited minutes, playing 5 minutes, 8 minutes a game at point guard is pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to get into that rhythm and get him the flow of the game when you're only directing traffic for a few minutes here and there. Next year is his time to really showcase the pro potential that everyone was excited about when he committed. CJ Cox is going to get a lot more volume. I've been saying this since November or December of last season. We're going to get the best of CJ Cox when Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer aren't there to eat up as much volume, because those guys are awesome. You have to give them a ton of volume. CJ Cox will start having more stuff run for him. He'll have the ball in his hands more next year, and that's exciting if you're Purdue. Antoine West has turned some heads. Jakari Harris has done some good things. Luke Ertl isn't going to back down to anyone. He's a maniacal competitor. You got a really full backcourt there. Jack Benter, Caden Pierce. Jack Benter has been awesome this year. He has been everything Purdue could have hoped for in that role. He's bringing some great energy. He was shot out of a cannon in these last 2 games, especially that game at Nebraska. Benter's been great. Caden Pierce comes in, and then what do you do at the center spot? So it's a long way of saying I'm not going to project it yet. We'll certainly get into all of this over the summer, but I think it's hard to say when you don't know what everyone else looks like. This feels like an easily top 25 type of roster going into next season. And then finally, a question from the great Jared Jesselaitis, Lafayette Radio over at 1017 The Hammer. Do you remember Travis Carroll being taller than 6'9"? I'll hang up and listen. And I actually have a good Travis Carroll story. So to answer the question, no. If you put a gun to my head and asked me how tall Travis Carroll was, I would have said 6'10". So I'm not too far off. He never played like a mountain of a man necessarily. I think what I remember more than anything was kind of the post hooks that were always a little bit fading away, and then the 12-foot jumpers he would take. But for those of you that don't know, I live in Indianapolis, and back this fall, I'm walking on the Monon Trail with my dog there north of Broad Ripple, and it's just a Saturday morning, and we're walking. I've got headphones in, whatever. And this dude runs fast, out for a run, and he's pushing one of those double strollers that has 2 babies in it. And this dude's tall. He's running like a deer, flies by me. And I look up, I'm like, God, that guy's tall. And then we keep walking, and this guy comes back down, and it's Travis Carroll. And Travis Carroll's running on the Monon, and he's pushing the double stroller, running legitimately fast. It's kind of wild. You see these guys and realize how athletic they are and how good of athletes they are. But yeah, it's not every day you see a guy 6'9" running, pushing a double stroller down a predominantly walking and biking trail. But no, a good blast from the past there, and it makes me feel old that Travis Carroll was at Purdue 12, 13 years ago. Would have been his senior year. Goodness. But that's all I've got for this week, guys. Thank you for spending time with me. Big one ahead. I'll be back here next Sunday night to talk about everything that goes down. Purdue, Michigan, Purdue, Indiana. Follow along on Twitter. We'll be tweeting about both the games, everything throughout the world of Purdue sports this week. Follow on Twitter. Send me questions. Do it there on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. Email the show, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a podcast here down the stretch. Until next time, enjoy the games and take care, everyone.